All right, shall we start?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to La Nuit des idées, rebuilding together smart ideas, smart projects born during the pandemic. This event is presented to you by the Embassy of France to the Philippines and Alliance Française de Manille. I am Charisse Aquino Tugade, Executive Director of the National Book Development Board, and I'll be your co-moderator for this evening.
Bonsoir, mesdames et messieurs. Je m'appelle Martin. Je suis l'attaché culturel à l'ambassade de France. Bienvenue à la Nuit des idées, édition de Manille. And I will also be your co-moderator this evening. It's a lovely evening to gather and talk about the different brilliant ideas that inspired many people to create their own projects and initiatives during the pandemic. Right, Charisse?
Yes, yes, yes. It truly is. Everyone looks so dashing and gorgeous, and I'm so excited that we're all sharing physical space together. And for those of you that are on Zoom and Facebook, sorry na lang kayo. So we're very excited to be with you to experience this year's Nuit des idées. And of course, this event wouldn't have been possible without the support of our partners. We would like to thank Ayala Museum,
Cultural Center of the Philippines,
the Philippine Italian Association,
Art Fair Philippines,
Leader of Light,
the National Book Development Board. I wonder who that is.
Brave New World,
and Reality Entertainment Incorporated. For everyone here tonight and for those who are watching us online through our live stream, we introduce you to La Nuit des idées, or the Night of Ideas, which was first organized in Paris way back in 2016. As you know, the French like to debate. It's actually a national sport in France to argue. So way back in 2016, they gathered thinkers from all over the world to talk about different issues that concern humanity. And so we're bringing that to the Philippines with roundtable discussions.
Great, and that's right. And for this theme, rebuilding together, we aim to explore the resilience and reconstruction of societies in the context of the COVID pandemic. In light of this, we are thrilled to have a variety of remarkable individuals across the different sectors to offer their advocacy and solutions for rebuilding the programs and projects following this crazy pandemic.
That's right. The pandemic has a profound effect on our way of life, or art de vivre. As a result of public health measures in many museums, galleries, theaters, expositions, many things have stopped operating in this, not just in this country, but in the whole world. So artists were compelled to discover new means to support their livelihood, to support artists, and to attract audiences.
So tonight, we are all here to provide a forum to discuss how individuals, the private sector, civil society, and the government are emerging from this global crisis with new ideas and projects to rebuild this cultural sector and assist institutions and artists in adjusting to the new normal.
Of course, since this is a French event, we had to start with some cocktails, some wine to, liberate our thoughts so we can exchange more freely, right? We can't wait to share with all of you what's in store for tonight. It's been months of preparations. In fact, the Night of Ideas was supposed to start on January 27th, but all over the world, there were different levels of lockdowns, of health measures that the French ministry decided to extend the program, and so that different countries can hold their Nights of Ideas at the most appropriate event. And I think in the Philippines, this is a right time to talk about, how things can change, right?
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Mariles Gostillo, Senior Director of the Ayala Museum, for her opening remarks.
Good evening. Her Excellency Michelle Bocuse, Ambassador of France to the Philippines. Her Excellency Radutsa Matake, Ambassador of Romania to the Philippines. Mr. Brian Macron, Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of Ireland to the Philippines. Mr. Marc Piton, Counselor for Cooperation and Cultural Affairs, French Embassy. Mr. Xavier Leroux, Executive Director of Alliance Française, Mr. Chris Miliado, Vice President and Artistic Director of Cultural Center of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ayala Museum, the proud host of this year's Night of Ideas. I hope you are suitably comfortable as we celebrate the free flow of ideas and knowledge this evening. Here's to a stimulating and enjoyable exchange. Good evening.
Thank you very much, Madam Bustillo.
Thank you, Mariles, for the warm greetings. Everyone seems to be ready for the program tonight. But before we call our first panelist, let's all hear a message from the Embassy of France to the Philippines.
I'd like to call Her Excellency, Ambassador de France aux Philippines, Madame Michelle Bocos.
Chers collègues, chers amis, chers invités, mesdames, messieurs, bonsoir. France is the country that produced the philosophers because we like to think about anything and everything. The French in deep thought is often referred to as Cartesian because René Descartes said, "Je pense, donc je suis." I think, therefore I am, meaning the true essence of man is to reflect and reason about what is happening around him. Sometimes the cafe culture is blamed for changes in society. Historically, the French Revolution is said to have resulted from many discussions of political ideas in salons and cafes that developed through time from the Renaissance to the Lumière period in the 18th century. Indeed, it was an intellectual and artistic movement that crossed most of Europe and produced much of the literature, art, and culture that we appreciate today. Society has evolved considerably since then with the establishment of democracy and civil liberties that we enjoy now in the 21st century. But discussions continue in different venues and modern media. We pursue this tradition of debates through the Night of Ideas that the Ministry launched in 2016, as Martin told you. We gathered intellectual and great minds from all over the world in Paris to talk about the issues and challenges at the time, like climate change, human rights, freedom of the press, and so on. The Institut Français and the network of French embassies and Alliance Française in the world extend this tradition globally to encourage people to exchange ideas in the hope of finding solutions to global problems. For the first time, the Philippines joined the Night of Ideas last year, 2021, to talk about how people can be closed in the context of lockdowns brought about by the pandemic. Interestingly, we've talked about how cycling became the alternative mode of transport that brought people closer when public transportation was not available. It proved to be happening everywhere in the world. This year, as we see the end of the tunnel, after 2 years of pandemic, we are called upon to rebuild together. As we were just told a moment ago, indeed, the cultural sector is one of the worst hit. Cultural institutions, museums, theaters, movie houses, galleries, all was closed to the public for such a long time. And artists had to be really creative about how to make a livelihood and how to continue to communicate in some ways. So we're very privileged tonight to gather actors in the cultural fields to share the experiences and show how the artists and cultural institutions were able to survive the pandemic and to adapt to this new normal. I really want to thank Mariles Gustillo for our partnership with the Ayala Museum in hosting the event. Thank you very, very much indeed. And thanks to you all for joining us for this evening. I really look forward to exchanging ideas with you. Bonne soirée. Enjoy the evening.
Merci, Madame l'Ambassadeur. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, so our first panelist, again, is the Senior Director of Arts and Culture at Ayala Foundation. She is also currently the Senior Director of the Ayala Museum, including both the museum and the Filipinas Heritage Library.
Since she joined the Ayala Museum in 2012, it has undergone renewed dynamism through astute programming to engage audiences. In 2015, she led the Ayala Museum in its collaboration with the Asian Society Museum in New York to mount a successful exhibition called Philippine Gold, Treasures of Forgotten Kingdoms.
Under her leadership, the Ayala Museum successfully had its soft opening on December 4, 2021 as an omni-channel museum. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up again for Ms. Mariles Gostillo.
Thank you very much. I think it's very interesting that you're asking all of us to speak about how we survived the pandemic, because we all went through hell and back. For me, in my case, I'd like to tell you about the Ayala Museum experience. But as a bit of background, the museum was established in the early 1970s under the auspices of the Filipinas Foundation, now known as the Ayala Foundation. Together with the Filipinas Heritage Library, which is also housed in this facility, the Ayala Museum is the foundation center for its art and culture advocacy. Its mandate then was to empower and instill pride in Filipinos through a deeper understanding of our own traditions, history, and culture. Over the years, this mandate has remained the same, though executed to be responsive to the times. In 2019, we closed for renovation to do our part to increase the general public's engagement with art and culture. Located in the midst of a mall, it was clear that our competition for the hearts and minds of the public were shopping, entertainment, fashion, and food. So we set out to be more accessible on-site, online, and off-site, and to be more engaging, even fascinating in brand new ways. But in 2020, like the rest of the world gone awry with the pandemic, the best laid plans seemed to be at risk until we decided to simply work steadily. Challenged by fits and starts brought about by lockdowns and shutdowns, our project managers, architects, and contractors boldly picked up the renovation where they left off and soldiered on with every setback. And for this, we are forever grateful. In the direst of circumstances, with many stuck at home, the intrepid staff of Ayala Museum and Filipinos Heritage Library pulled together while working from home, stretching their creativity to provide online moments of learning, levity, calm, and respite that only art and culture can provide with digital technologies never tried before. With no end in sight to the pandemic and unsure of when we would be able to access our building, we were unwavering in working to enhance the museum experience with new narratives, exhibitions, and programming inspired by our collections and enhanced by digital technology, which brings us to today. Here's a short video about the museum and library's response to the new normal.
After a 2-year renovation, the Ayala Museum, which also houses the Filipinas Heritage Library, has begun a new phase. It has become phygital, meaning it simultaneously exists in the physical world in our newly renovated facility, and it exists in the digital world in our newly revamped and robust Ayala Museum portal and the Ayala Museum app. The on-site experience is defined by more exhibition, event, and retail spaces. We've increased the exhibition spaces from 6 to 11, the event spaces from just 1 to 5, and we've moved the museum shop to the ground floor so it is accessible on the street. With our soft opening last December 4, the ground floor to the 3rd floor and the Filipinas Heritage Library on the 6th floor are what's currently accessible to the public. The 4th floor, where the museum's permanent collections of pre-colonial Philippine gold, Philippine indigenous textiles, and Asian tradeware ceramics will be displayed, are still inaccessible as the collections are currently being installed. The ground floor boasts of a new inviting lobby marked by a distinctive Asian sensibility and borrowed landscape. It also showcases the country's first ever digital gallery. Powered by a new data management system, the gallery encourages young visitors to virtually explore objects from the museum and library collections up close like never before in a fresh new way. The online experience proves to be equally satisfying with a newly revamped Ayala Museum portal and app, enabling ready access to the museum and library collections at your fingertips, powered by the same data management system that underpins the digital gallery. It also serves as the online destination for virtual exhibitions, lectures, workshops, concerts, and performances that the museum and library have been known for all these years. By connecting the digital and the physical, everything in the new Ayala Museum is now networked and omni-channel to reach a wider audience and help feed an ongoing curiosity about art and culture. A virtuous circle, if you will, no matter where it begins, be it on-site or online.
Thank you so much, Mariles. Digital, huh? So our next panelist is currently the director of Fundación Sanso. He started working for museums in 1999 when he became a curatorial assistant at the Ayala Museum and has since then become a curatorial consultant to several private museums in Manila.
He was a curator for the Philippine section of the 2016 Art Council in Taiwan. He also taught theories in art management at the College of St. Bernard in 2016 and is a contributing writer to Brave New World. After the Deluge comes the dawn, Sanso Textile Designs, all by Southeast Asian Publishing, and to the recently launched Andres Barrio Quinto, published by Rizon.
He is a writer for the catalog Sanso, Setting the Stage, a joint project between Fundación Sanso and Ayala Museum, as well as other Zobel and Sanso, a project between Fundación Sanso and the Ateneo Art Gallery. Without further ado, let us all give a warm welcome to Ricky Francisco.
I prepared something written tonight, but I'd rather go in the spirit of the discussion and just wing it. As the French say, they think, therefore they are. I think Filipinos have this knee-jerk reaction, we act, therefore we are. So I'll just try to do it this way. I speak in front of you in behalf of 6 other writers, over 300 artists, and 14 galleries who have all contributed to create this book. But this book is just not, it's not the only output of that pandemic resilience story. This started with an online exhibition, which we organized in July 2020. As early as May, when we realized that the lockdown was going to be prolonged, and we were so surprised that it became more than a year and a half, we realized that our artists needed financial support as well. They needed to earn. So we organized, together with 14 other galleries, an online exhibition with over 400 artworks, mostly from Filipinos, but there were some submissions from France as well as some other countries. And we were able to sell a lot of this artwork so that the artists and the galleries would be able to survive through the pandemic. In front of you is the exhibition, the website of the online exhibition, and listed at the right are the galleries and the people who contributed towards it. Next slide, please. So there were 400 artworks, and a lot of them are in some categories responses to the COVID pandemic. Among them are Pong Bayog's Laban, which characterizes a lot of the responses, the artistic responses. These valorize our frontliners who are so essential first part of the pandemic. Next slide, please. We were also given a lot of entries from the artists, which are a reaction to how alien this entire new setup was. So this is Renz Baluyot's work, which she said, it has an ironic title, It's Nice Outside. An anonymous person in a hazmat suit treads on, bridging ways on how to live in this world in a time of peril. Yeah. Next slide, please. Some of the artists dove deep into their faith, such as Anton del Castillo with his Surrender. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide, please. While others focused on this confinement inside our houses and the new experience of having to rely on government aid, such as Melkasipit's Bawal Lumabas. Next slide, please. This one, an artwork by Mix Villanueva, focused on how others coped with being cooped up. So children were the epitome of how to adjust to this new normal, playing with their imagination while they were inside. Next slide, please. And of course, there were humorous things such as Kiko Capile's due date, which he made with Meralco envelopes. Meralco is the electricity's provider, and everyone was just so surprised when they saw their bills after a few months. So he made this in actual Meralco envelopes and then painted it again on canvas. Next slide, please. Humor is really one of the coping mechanisms of the Filipinos. So this is Angelito Antonio's face mask, and there were a lot of these types of artworks. Next slide, please. So in behalf of the writers, I'm going to share with you some of the ideas that were brought up. Pri Paipon, who's one of the writers, spoke about the art group called Art Rocks and Art for Life. They're a group of doctors who are also collectors of art, who auctioned off artworks and bought artworks to be able to raise 12 million pesos within the first 2 weeks of the lockdown, to be able to buy protective PPEs for our frontliners. So the next slide, please. These are some of the artworks that were auctioned. So we see that the solitary, often home-confined artist was one of the actors reaching out to society and helping. Next slide, please. We also had former Ayala Museum director, Petty Benitez Johanot, who wrote about art in times of crisis from an art historical perspective, and then classified the artworks in our project under her classifications. Next slide, please. And even Pete Lacaba, who's a journalist, created a parody of a song called Isipin Mong Walang COVID, to be sung in John Lennon's Imagine. Next slide, please. Bogie Ruiz, who is an artist, an art critic, and also an editorial cartoonist, created how do you say it? An imaginary scenario where an old artist like himself was trying to deal with the pandemic. So, next slide, please. And then we had contributing photographers who documented this once-in-a-century event. Next slide, please. So it showed how different we were under the lockdown. Okay, next slide. So all these new things which we hope to show to the present and future generations, save for them. So next slide, please. I'd just like to thank everyone who contributed to this, the artists, the writers, the galleries, and of course the Art Plus team that made this possible. This is a pandemic project, which was the idea of Nico Chotico, myself, and Jugul Chua Unsu. And we worked on this together with all these people to be able to bring you this book, and as well as to help the artists and galleries at that time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ricky, for that. Face shields, right? I saw face shields and that. I don't want to go back to that again. All right, so thanks for that wonderful presentation. And our next panelist is online. He's a known author, and his famous works include As He Breathed the Air of Freedom and the French-Speaking World. He has worked as a journalist for Radio France International. I didn't say it correctly, but
Radio France International.
yes, yun na yun. Since 1990.
In 2009, he was awarded the European Prize of the Society of Dramatic Authors and Composers. In 2016, he received the Jean Monnet Prize for European Literature and several times the Press Prize at the Avignon Festival, where he has become one of the most performed authors, accomplishing about 50 creations.
In Romania, since the fall of communism, he has become the most performed playwright. Since 2016, a municipal theater in Suceava, the capital of his home area, has been named after him. Let us all give it up for Matej Wisniewski.
Bonjour. L'expérience la plus forte que j'ai vécue pendant le confinement, cela a été une participation à une opération initiée par le Théâtre de la Ville à Paris. Une opération qui était intitulée Consultation poétique. Ça a été l'idée du directeur du théâtre, le metteur en scène, Emmanuel de Marcimota, et puis toute l'équipe du théâtre s'est engagée dans une consultation poétique par téléphone pour ceux qui désiraient être appelés pour qu'on leur lise des poèmes. Donc, il y a eu les comédiens du théâtre, aussi d'autres auteurs, d'autres collaborateurs extérieurs. On a lu des poèmes en français, dans d'autres langues, en italien, en portugais. Moi, j'ai lu des poèmes en roumain. Ceux qui voulaient avoir ce contact avec le théâtre de la ville et les gens qui pouvaient leur proposer des poèmes s'inscrivaient sur le site du théâtre de la ville, laissaient un numéro de téléphone, et après nous, on appelait et on commençait le dialogue. Bonjour, vous êtes où? Voilà, vous êtes seul. Il avait une conversation voilà, pour chauffer un petit peu l'atmosphère. Après, on discutait de la poésie pendant 10 minutes, 15 minutes. On posait la question, quels sont vos poètes favoris, préférés? Est-ce que vous préférez entendre de Prévert ou un poète étranger ou de Baudelaire ou je ne sais pas quoi? Moi, j'ai lu pas mal des poètes roumains, traduits certains en français, pour un public en général roumanophone et francophone. Cela a été très fort comme émotion, comme relation, parce que j'ai eu cette révélation à quel point la poésie était importante à ce moment-là. Le confinement nous a poussés presque tous à avoir une relation plus forte par rapport à l'art, à la littérature, et j'ai pu découvrir à quel point la parole poétique pouvait nous soulager, nous donner un peu d'oxygène, un peu d'énergie, un peu d'espoir en ces moments-là de confinement et d'incertitude.
Thank you, Matej, for that insightful presentation. Our next panelist is the co-founder of Philippine Art Events, Inc., which hosts the annual Art Fair Philippines and Art in the Park and other successful ventures that bring together Philippine modern and contemporary art in unique venues made accessible to a growing and thriving clientele. With her training in arts management, she has presided over projects from organizing visual arts exhibitions in public spaces. She's
currently head of the Visual Arts Committee of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. Lately, she has ventured out to the performing arts and co-produced a heritage online concert titled Hinahanap-Hanap Kita Manila in collaboration with the National Parks and Development Committee. She's recently completed research for the British Council of Philippines on Arts and Cultural Philanthropy in the Philippines, Trends, Perspectives, and Opportunities.
She also participates in the deliberations with the Arts, Culture, and Creative Industries Block of the Philippine Congress and Legislation for the Creative Industries. Please all welcome Geraldine Dindin Alaneta.
Hi, good evening. I'm here to talk about Art Fair Philippines. I'd like to acknowledge Tricky Lopa, who's here in the audience tonight, who's a co-founder. Yeah. Can we have the first slide? I prepared a PowerPoint. Okay, so when I thought about this evening of ideas, I wanted to open with that independent curator, the late Bobby Valenzuela, would tell all of the young artists that he mentored years ago. These artists are very successful now in the Philippine contemporary art scene. We always talk about art is about ideas. So I just wanted to open with that. Next slide, please. And then I thought further that I was interested to find out if there was anything online about the development of an art fair as an idea. I'm interested in a history of ideas because we're currently offering it now in the arts management program in the De La Salle College of St. Benilde. No? So I thought it might be interesting to see if there was anything online for the art fair. So I found something, I found an article, I found a few research papers, but I thought just to focus on the article but this is by all means not exhaustive. So the development of an art fair as an idea started in ancient times. It was two annual religious festivals and pilgrimages were held during the Roman and Greek empires to the Han Dynasty. This drew a lot of people to attend the celebrations. There was a commercial aspect to them as they were displays of rare items for sale, which were acquired by the rich people who attended the festivals. And then later on, from the 5th century to the 16th century, around Europe, artisanal fairs became popular. No, so it was interesting because these were frequented by merchants around the globe, and there were merchant contracts and an international system of financial credit. So this was also when the patron-client relationship was introduced. Again, rare items were displayed and merchants worked at making their stalls eye-catching. Next slide, please. And then the 16th century, in the Antwerp art fairs, this was when the rise of the art dealer came about. The dealer usually had a large network, had an educated background, endless capital, and a commercial mindset. And then from the 17th to 18th century, this was when the trade fairs started. These were designed to advertise new items and promote their production, which allowed future orders, not just on-the-spot transactions. And then from the 18th to 19th centuries, exhibitions were held to promote the arts. So this was when the bigger exhibitions, such as the Summer Exhibition of the Royal Academy of the Arts, the Great Exhibition of 1851 in Hyde Park, and the World's Art Fairs in Paris and others elsewhere. So this was a time when these great exhibitions were happening. Next slide, please. So, no, slide before that. So it was in the 20th century where we saw the rise of the contemporary art fairs. These emergent areas that were in the periphery of the art market because they were looking for what to promote the city and to the art market. So it started in Art Cologne, 1967, and then Art Basel, 1970, and these eventually expanded to an international network. So by the 21st century, based on the article, Art Basel Miami is considered the turning point which led to the development of other art fairs, the art fair model as with today, which has proliferated around the world. Slide. So now let's go to how it came about. It was actually founded in 2013, together with my partners, Tricky Lapa. We were approached by galleries to create an art fair that could be recognized internationally. But the track record of the group was we also organized Art in the Park in Velasquez Park. This is an affordable art fair in partnership with the Museum Foundation of the Philippines to raise funds for the National Museum. And interestingly, at the same time, I don't know if you remember this trick, we were also thinking about what an art fair. No? So everything came together in 5 days. So the first edition of the art fair was launched in 2013 at the Link. This was actually suggested by Mr. Fernando Abel, and the first year brought in 6,000 attendees. Next slide, please. So this is the website of Art Fair Philippines, which you can please go find it online. And these are some of the sections that we have developed over the years from 2013 to 2022. I don't know if you can see the details. We have the projects, the photos section, the film section, the talk section, the tour section, the open studios, and then eventually we added the art trail, 10 days of art, and the residency section. Next slide, please. So these are some photos of the gallery space think from these are, well, from year to year, the photos look similar, no? So from 2013 to 2020, next slide. Next slide. And then we also managed to create other spaces, such as a cinema, an indoor cinema, and at the rooftop, an outdoor cafe. Next slide. Okay, so Art Fair Philippines 2020, these were some of the highlights on site right before the pandemic lockdown. You can actually see this on our website. So we try to document the highlights of the art fair every year. We started in 2016. So it shows you the different sections of the art fair, as well as the way the car park has been transformed into house all participating galleries. So we also have a talks program, open studios, and then we have a corollary program called 10 Days of Art, which basically documents all of the art activities around the city during the 10 days that coincides with the art fair. Since the very beginning, we've been working with sponsors, the Ayala Group of Companies, Globe Studios, Ayala Land, and then, well, of course, Don Papa Rom. And then we also were working with Julius Baer. Yeah. So we've been able to sustain it in terms of funding through sponsorships and ticket sales. And we've also been very lucky because the audience has really grown from the 6,000 people who visited the art fair from 2013. And then, next slide, please. So for most of, well, for 2021, we were purely online during the lockdown. So the website was used as a platform or storefront for the galleries. Each gallery made a short video about their exhibition, artists, and programs. On the art fair website, galleries provided also information so that collectors could contact them immediately. The galleries could be visited by appointment only. And so the talks, films, photo tours, open studios, programs, all migrated online. So everything was happening through Zoom or pre-recorded video sessions. Next slide, please. One thing that we were able to do on site, which we launched in 2021, was a partnership with Don Param. We managed to work with them to come up with a residency program to provide artists an opportunity to continue their art practice beyond the confines of their studios and homes and immerse themselves in new communities. The selected artists in residence traveled to the residency program sites when travel restrictions eased up despite the alert levels. So we were able to have, we have 5 partners. Next slide, please. So the Linangan Art Residency in Alfonso, Cavite, Emerging Islands in San Juan, La Union. Next slide, please. Okay. Well, Orange Projects in Bacolod, Negros Occidental, Butanding Barrio in Puerto Princesa, Palawan. Next slide. And also, the Manila Observatory partnered up with us so we could do residency programs focusing on art and science. Next slide, please. So, Art Fair Philippines 2022, well, was both online and on-site during an alert level 1 scenario. Maybe let's watch the video which shows how Art Fair Philippines has continually evolved during the pandemic. Yeah. So this was held at Ayala Triangle Gardens. Turkey brought in a partner, Data, to be able to come up with an augmented reality program, which you could access the different, the different digital art, yeah. So, yeah. Then we also had an exhibition on fashion photography. Yeah. And a film program again with Data Art, yeah. So we're very fortunate that despite the pandemic, our sponsors have decided to continue working with us. Thank you very much.
Hello. Thank you, Dindin, for sharing with us the making of Fair Philippines. And it's very, I guess, fulfilling we're able to do something similar in the Philippines and allowing for the dynamism of the visual arts in the country, both as a practice for the artists, but also as a market for collectors, people who are appreciating art and actually buying art. Our next panelist has studied chemistry and 5 years of research, nuclear metallurgy. I think our connection is, I don't know, either the battery of the microphone is down. Okay. He earned his doctorate degree in science in 1971 and entered the world of science journalism at the magazine La Recherche, and then at Usine Nouvelle, where he was head of technology from 1977. He created and directed Science et Technique, a monthly magazine of technological perspective, for 10 years. He's also one of the co-author of the first French language report on the material society called La Révolution de l'Intelligence from 1983 to 1985, written at the request of the Ministry of Research. With Futurables, he has developed a diagnostic and evaluation tool for organizations based on intangible factors. Currently, he is a scientific advisor and member of the editorial board of Futurables International in Paris. He's also the associate professor at the HEG of Freiburg in the EMBA and CAS supply chain in Switzerland. He advises companies of all sizes and is the author of studies and reports for the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, equipment, public organizations, companies, and agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome André-Yves Portneuf.
Bertrand Piccard, un spécialiste de lean management, une méthode souvent appliquée hélas de travers en Europe, a fait travailler pendant quelques semaines médecins, infirmières, administratifs et autres membres du personnel. Ensemble, ils ont ainsi établi de bonnes pratiques du travail, acceptées par tous, en partageant leur expérience et en se découvrant les uns les autres. Cette collaboration a construit une confiance, une compréhension réciproque, permettant d'œuvrer réellement de concert comme les membres d'un bon orchestre. Résultat, des rendez-vous obtenus en 3 jours et non plus 3 semaines. Dès le premier appel, celui-ci ne durait plus que 4 minutes, en moyenne, au lieu de souvent 40 minutes. Et tous les professionnels du centre, qui enfin agissaient de concert, étaient satisfaits de travailler dans la détente et de façon utile pour les patientes. Cette confiance a permis aussi une réussite exemplaire aux Pays-Bas. Cette réussite sert de modèle dans plusieurs pays, notamment en France. En 2006, un ancien infirmier, Jos de Blok, choqué par les pratiques très marchandes des soins à domicile, imagine avec un ami informaticien une organisation complètement basée sur la confiance. Confiance dans les travailleurs et aussi confiance dans les clients, c'est-à-dire les malades. Cette organisation Buurzorg, mot qui en néerlandais signifie soins de quartier, est une association. Elle est passée d'une équipe de 4 infirmières en 2007 à 1300 équipes, 14 000 travailleurs en 2019. Chaque équipe est autonome, elle gère elle-même son travail, ses finances. On lui demande de rendre le patient le plus autonome possible. L'infirmière aide le patient et sa famille à trouver ensemble les solutions les plus adaptées à leur situation. Une organisation centrale très légère aide et non pas dirige les équipes. Le résultat de ce management par la confiance est positif pour les travailleurs, particulièrement satisfaits, mais également pour les patients qui doivent beaucoup plus rarement être emmenés en urgence à l'hôpital. Le bilan est positif aussi pour le pays, car la dépense d'aide et de soins est réduite de près de moitié. Une association dénommée Soignons Humains est en train d'implanter en France des équipes de soins à domicile transposant le modèle Buurzorg. Dans tous nos pays, les années à venir seront difficiles. Nous pouvons et nous devons construire notre renaissance économique et humaine en pariant sur la confiance, sur le respect mutuel, sur le réussir ensemble dans nos entreprises, nos administrations, nos relations entre pays. C'est possible et c'est vital, c'est nécessaire.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boko, for a very optimistic, encouraging outlook. That leads me to our next panelist. With interdisciplinary experience that spans the public and private sector, she creates an environment that amplifies voices, connecting various communities and organizations. As Executive Director of the National Book Development, she is working on the National Book Database to standardize publishing metadata and bibliographic information of Filipino authored publications. She's also envisioned and spearheaded the Book Nook, storytelling and reading communities that provide Pinoy books for kids and kids at heart. Awitawi, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our moderator, Ms. Tagano.
Hello again. All right, let's start by, I have a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so again, my name is Charisse. We've said it so many times, from the National Book Development Board. We are the book authority of the Philippines, so we steward the publishing industry and make sure that people read our own books, Filipino authored books. Can we start the PowerPoint presentation, please? Okay, all right, Books Philippines. Next slide, please. All right, so before the COVID pandemic, our publishing industry was already in trouble. And because of the pandemic, publishing houses had to shut down, and many authors were out of work. But I'd like to talk about this number, 24-1. All right, 24-1. It is our import-export disparity. There's 24 more times foreign books entering our country we set out. Okay, so if we want to talk about inclusivity, it's not inclusive enough. We deserve our stories. We deserve our stories in our own language. If you look at our libraries, when was the last time we all went to the library? Well, there's a library upstairs. Let's explore. Go to our libraries. You go to our bookstores. We've relegated ourselves. We've othered ourselves. And we place our books in a very tiny Filipiniana section. Do we deserve this? No. We don't deserve this. We deserve our stories. And the world deserves our stories. Next slide, please. So with the National Book Development Board, what we're trying to do is to reclaim our narrative and reclaim our space, right? Our space, whether it be physical, whether it be online, whether it be just sharing our voice with the rest of the world. This is what we're trying to do. So last year we pivoted. Next slide, please. All right, so there's a shift. Instead of problem solving, we all know that COVID has affected us. We all went digital, but we sought to problem seek in all fronts. Number one is we decided to really do an institutional change. And we decided to revamp and look inward, look at our readership programs. If you look at the problem in the Philippines, there is a very low functional literacy in many regions. So what does this mean? You lack critical thinking, right? You lack all of this. Our scores, our test scores are going down, the PISA scores. So we have to revamp that readership program. How can we revamp that when we're not reading the languages that we understand? We also work to do our creators program and making sure that creators are creating, especially during this pandemic. And of course, our publishers program and making sure that our publishers continue to publish and find those business opportunities. And of course, we work with policy and we work with procurement. The Department of Education is the largest institutional buyer of Philippine books. So we work with them and ensure that they are more efficient, and we give advice, right, on Philippine books. So I'd like to talk about one program that we did during the pandemic, and this is called the Book Nook, all right? So as I said, a lot of people don't go to our libraries. It's a very colonized space. So you cannot have a nanay, a mother, with 5 children enter a library, right? They won't allow her with the children that are loud. They're 2, 3, 4, 5 wearing chinelas. People won't let her enter. So we sought to find spaces that were easy for most Filipinos to visit. So we set up the Book Nook in what? Palenque. In your library, not Palenque, DepEd libraries. We work with tourist and culture areas, culture centers, buses. So we found these places. Mostly we set it up in indigenous and remote areas. Why? Because these are the areas where they have much, the culture is intact. There's all these languages and epics and all of that. So we set up these really wonderful spaces and equipped the leaders with the knowledge of setting up a library, doing storytelling, and not like that, gulo-gulo, right? Opening the pages and teaching all of these people, hey Mike, on how to just do storytelling and management, right? So with these spaces, if you look to the left, you will find this is a Book Nook that we set up in Kiangan, right? Ifugao. This was all last year, and this is an iPad. And if you look at that guy, that's Marlon Martin. And Zumaraga Samar, next slide, please. We also set up spaces like in buses. This is the Book Nook in Tagum, Davao. Next slide, please. All right, we also have in Sultan Kudarat, Maguindanao, and in Sitangkay, Tawi-Tawi. We have several spaces in Tawi-Tawi. So I'd like for you to look at that boy in a bangka with books, with boxes of books, right? So this is how we traveled during the pandemic, okay? So we mobilized 50 sites, This year, another 50 sites. Next year, 100 sites. So how am I going to do this? I need money. So if you have money, please send it over. All right. So we equip these spaces, we do training, and we ensure that these spaces read in their own language and also start writing in their own language. Next slide, please. So here we have Palala, Nueva Ecija, Nabas, Aklan, right in front of Boracay. Next slide. Okay, so this one is, I visited this group last year, November. Still COVID, still there. The face mask, but I'm wearing one. Okay, so I brought these books and was so excited to bring, Filipino authored books from all of it, from Visayan, Tagalog, English, whatnot. And the little girl comes up to me, she saw the book and she's like, "Where's my book? Where's my book?" So if you look at our publications, we don't have publications in any of the Aita languages, right? So her experience, I cried, I didn't know what to do. So I cried. So now we have so much to do, okay? Most are in Filipino and in English, but we start writing and reading in our own language. So we experience the totality of just being Filipino. That's what we did last year. And aside from that, we set up the book nook. We provided grants to creators, Creative Nation grant, publication. So if any of you are interested in doing publications, translations, so we would like to translate all of our stories to other languages and other stories from around the world, from France to Filipino or English. So I have QR codes if you want to scan that. I have that. Next slide, please. So, yeah, those are just some of our programs, and we register everyone. Next slide. So next slide, please. So I think it's working. So for the longest time, we were not producing enough, okay? 2016, we have 8,314 new titles in the Philippines. So that's the ISBN, the International Standard Book Number. 8314-7671, 2018-7474, 2019, 6666, 2020, 6510. But last year, the end of last year, we checked, right? And something happened. Right? Everyone started creating. And this is not just because of our agency, it's because of all the publishers like Corina Velasco, who's here, who really just engaged everyone to start creating because of, the Book Development Association of the Philippines. So now we have from 2021, the largest number of published works. So we're quite excited for that, and we still do need help. So if you have money, we need it. If you have funding, we need that. So again, thank you very much, and let's collaborate.
All right, can you flash your...
Yes, I will. I'll send my bank account to everyone.
All right. But thank you, Cherise. That was very inspiring indeed. Yeah, I could feel I was moved by that story about the little girl approaching you. Where's my book? See, but yeah, hopefully she'll have it.
Yes, hopefully by this year.
So our next panelist, they are the creators of the first edition of the Festival of Film and Literature for Children, called Alice Nilachita in 2003, which became one of the official sections of the Rome International Film Festival in 2006. They also worked in the film selection for Alice Nilachita, the youth section of the Rome Festival, and coordinated the event Aspetan, the Rome Festival, from 2006 to 2009.
In 2019, they were the artistic directors of the New Cinema Quatral Film Festival and the Outdoor Cinema Arena in Torbella, Monaca.
Even under the lockdown, Alice Nilachita did not stop and gave birth to the Cinema de Casa project, an initiative conceived to unite people through cinema. The window Cinema de Casa opened at Laghetto del Oro after the lockdown to create, in collaboration with UNSPA, the first floating arena experience in the city of Rome called the Floating Theater. Let us all give it up for Fabio Bettini and Gianluca Gianelli.
Eccoci, allora intanto Okay, video.
Siamo di Bologna, siamo.
Il fascismo per me non può essere considerato una fede politica.
In una notte come questa si parla, ci si confida. Che ne sa lei? Ha mai passato una notte come questa?
Che non era fascista io ero presso e quindi non si può parlare di vera fede politica a chi opprime le fedi altrui.
Io non ho detto niente.
Io odiavo il nazismo e il fascismo perché rappresentavano l'anticultura, rappresentavano l'oscurantismo, rappresentavano la negazione di tutto quello in cui io sono stata invece allevata e educata.
Okay, thank you for that online presentation. Panelist is one of the most distinguished film producers in the Philippines. For over 3 decades, he has been serving on the board of directors of Regal Entertainment, the oldest and largest production company in the country. In 2003, he co-founded Reality Entertainment Incorporated with a vision to set new standards for Filipino film in its narrative, production, and technological aspects.
His brand has been internationally recognized with films like On the Job 2012, which was featured in the 2013 Cannes Directors Fortnight or Cannes de la Réalisateur, 2019 Best Picture winner by Best, as well as the Aswan Chronicles film series from 2012 to 2014, which made history as the first ever film in the Philippines to be shot entirely using green screen technology. The recent film he produced, On the Job, Missing 8, has premiered in the main competition of the Venice International Film Festival and has premiered in HBO Asia as a series.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Ronald Don Don Monteverde.
So we prepared a PowerPoint presentation for tonight. So I'm not going to intro any more Regal because it's been there for the longest time, so 30 years. But it's one of the longest running company that pioneered a lot of films. To date, Regal has more than 1,000 titles in its library. So I'm here to actually talk about the the company that we created called Reality Studios. So next slide, please. So we produced movies during pre-pandemic, the pre-pandemic times, and we were able to do a lot of films because during that time, we were able to show it in cinemas. And it was doing very well. And, you know, the type of films that we usually do and target are films that we feel that could not just work in the local cinema scene, but also on the international stage. No? So, of course, there are a lot of troubles when we did it, but we're happy that, you know, we're making our mark. Next slide, please. So one of our films, Honor Thy Father, actually premiered in Toronto Film Festival and has won also a lot of awards, no, in international competitions. Next slide, please. And By Bust also was premiered in the New York International Film Festival and basically won a lot of awards also here in the Philippines. Next slide, please. And of course, we did Seclusion and Quaresma, which were all taken in by, it was shown not only in cinemas, but also in a lot of streaming platforms. Next, okay, so this was during the pre-pandemic time. So when the pandemic hit, we were one of the hardest hit industry to actually, you know, we experienced a lot of hardship during the pandemic because, you know, the cinema basically was dead. Everything was closed. So we had to find a way to actually try to get our content out. So it's a good thing that we were able to actually create some movies that reach, you know, the global stage. No? So we were, so some streaming platforms, international streaming platforms like HBO, contacted us so that, you know, we can, you know, start doing our practicing our craft again. So I think a lot of people knows about this series now. So we're about to actually shoot this by August of this year. So it's called Call My Agent. So we're doing the Filipino version for HBO Max. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, so this is my partner, Eric Mati. So he actually directed most of the films that we've been doing for Reality and he has he's one of the best minds in cinema right now here in the Philippines. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so also during the pandemic, we also tried to think of how we can also show other content. Now, so my partner and I actually spoke with some partners to come up with this brand called Upstream. So it's a transactional video in demand in the internet. No? So next slide, please. Yeah, so it's a partnership between Reality, Regal Entertainment, and Globe Studios. So these are the three, and of course, Globe Telecoms. No? So the three companies up there, main goal is really to produce the content, no? To be able to show content online, no? with the streaming platform that we created. Okay, next slide, please. So when you see the multiverse of the whole thing, no, you can see how we actually we want to target a lot of types of content coming in. No? So anything, any content that we can think of that we can actually put in this platform, that's what we did. No? So we can go to the next slide, please. So one of the some of the content highlights of Upstream is we were able to do the film festival. This is a yearly festival that's been done in our country. No? So it's one of the biggest money makers. No? But during the pandemic, of course, since there's no cinema, they decided to go online. And when we put it on Upstream on an exclusive basis, no, we were able to hit at least 200,000 tickets during that time, and we were able to bring the new films to the homes of our audience. And aside from that, we're also doing sporting events and music festivals, no, that we stream live, no, on the platform. So again, for the Filipino people to enjoy. Next. So we also bought content, no? We call this a Korean wave. So since Korean content is pretty big also in the Philippines, so we also targeted these kinds of content for the platform. So this is one of the biggest partnerships that we did. So there were a lot of audience that were clamoring for Hollywood films. So we spoke to Universal and we forged a good partnership with them to be able to show their latest title also on the platform. Of course, it's on a delayed basis, but it's like 45 days delayed now from the time they actually show this in the theaters abroad. But one nice thing about this is, you know, we're able to bring it again to our audience here in the Philippines. Next slide, please. So aside from the content that international content that we brought in, we also did originals. No? So of course, we wanted to also give work to a lot of our comrades in the industry who has actually lost their jobs, no, during the pandemic. So we continued to do local stuff so we can actually give work, and not only that, showcase some more local films here in the country. Next slide, please. That's it. Thank you.
Hey, wonderful work, Don. Sana we can collaborate with our Philippine content, our books, and do some sort of cross-media adaptation with your movies. Oh, let's go.
There you go. I was just gonna say I'm very excited to see the Filipino adaptation of Call My Agent. But well, looking forward to seeing more content on your upstream platform.
Yes, so looking forward to download. All right. So where are we? Our next panelist is currently the Regional Music Attaché of the French Embassy for Southeast Asia, based in Singapore. Her work consists of coordinating and cooperating with international cultural projects, along with the wider mission of promoting the French music industry abroad.
Seeing the faces here, and I'm sure a lot of the people that are connected on the social media from the Philippines will recognize her. Sabrina Durand was the key organizer of the Fête de la Musique for all the many years that she was in the Philippines working for the Alliance Française de Manille. So, ladies and gentlemen, Sabrina.
Magandang gabi sa lahat. Good evening et bonsoir à tous. I'm Sabrina Durand, the Regional Music Attaché for Southeast Asia, based at the Embassy of France in Singapore. I would like to thank the French Embassy to the Philippines and the Alliance Française de Manille for the invitation at la Nuit des idées 2022 in Manila. And it's a special opportunity for me to reconnect with the Philippines as I work at Alliance Française de Manille for several years. So in line with the Nuit des idées theme, Smart Ideas, Smart Project born during the pandemic, I will present you in 3 parts a short overview of measures and initiatives which have been implemented by the French Ministry of Culture and Artists to support the music industry at all levels during the pandemic. To limit the impact of the pandemic, the French state has taken a number of measures in favor of companies, NGOs, and freelancers in the field of music. On top of these dedicated national funds and schemes, local authorities have also been able to roll out regional fundings. For the past 2 years, more than 450 million euros have been allocated to the music industry through the action of the Ministry of Culture and the CNM, the French National Music Center, in form of solidarity funds, partial activity cost coverage, bank loan reimbursement report, and specific measures to maintain the status of performing artist which is the statut des intermittents du spectacle en France. Music professional organizations have also released fundings to support their society members. Just to name a few, SACEM, the Society of Authors, Composers and Publishers, and FCM, Music Creation Fund, and Adami and Spedidam, which are two French collective management organizations for performers' rights. As of today, the French government is still supporting the relaunch of live music and performing art industries with a new dedicated budget of 3 million euros. For the past 15 years, the digital has remained the #1 channel to promote and listen to music. The COVID-19 crisis has accelerated this trend for online music listening. Due to the pandemic, musicians and artists have improved their skills in promoting their music throughout digital solutions. Music teaching also had to adapt its methods to ensure pedagogical continuities. Let's underline some facts. The increasing number of online performances organized by musicians, performing arts, and cultural institutions on social media and streaming platforms. Just to name a few, like Facebook Live, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, French artists like Jean-Louis Aubert, or Bob Sinclair, the DJ, who was offering a daily DJ set online. Regarding the operas and theater all over the world, in Europe, in France, and in Asia, they had a lot of broadcasting and rebroadcasting of concert and opera. It was the case in France, London, Vienna, or Sydney. Actually, they were showing this recorded performance on their online channel. We also have to underline the widespread of distance learning for conservatories and School of Music, especially in Paris, in Lyon, who took initiative to organize e-conference and use software as Zoom, Classroom, Skype meetings to ensure this pedagogical continuity. There was also a widespread of e-workshop like MOOC, Massive Open Online Courses, or webinar for the professional training. As far as I'm concerned, for the last 2 years, I had almost 15 webinars in my previous work. To give you concrete example of what I've been implementing, I will present you 2 French innovative projects. These projects were existing before the pandemic. Nevertheless, they have improved the working and creative conditions of musicians during lockdowns. These 2 projects are the writing camps, or writing session, and Nomad Play, a French application dedicated to online music rehearsal. So the first project I will talk about is the writing session. It's an innovative online experience gathering music talent from Asia and France. It has been initiated by the CNM, the French National Music Center, and the Royal Music Week in Malaysia, which is the largest electronic music and conference festival in Asia. So far, musicians from Indonesia, Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand have participated in the online edition 2020 and 2021, and it was supposed to be face-to-face, and we hope it will resume next year as a face-to-face project. This project has multiple goals. It aims to create remotely a diversity of sounds to be promoted and broadcasted on music platforms. It aims to build an artistic bridge, a free creative space, and a cross-cultural collaboration. And it aims, finally, to build up new market developments and audience for the music which has been composed with this artist. The second project I will talk about is Nomad Play. It's an innovative platform, music platform, that allows you to play virtually alongside prestigious musicians and musical ensembles, such as Orchestre National de Jazz or the French violinist Renaud Capuçon. The app was designed by Digital Music Solution, a French music startup. Nomad Play gives the possibility to mute any instrument in a recording and take the place of the original musician. Actually, it was quite used and it's still used by musicians, beginners or professionals, and by the music conservatories for rehearsal sessions during lockdown. And now, as borders are now opening up in Europe and across Southeast Asia, we hope music project and collaboration will be resuming pretty soon between Eastern and Western countries. Thank you for your attention. Feel free to ask questions. I will be connected later to the Nuit des idées. Merci beaucoup. Bonne soirée.
Merci beaucoup, Sabrina. It's nice to hear from you, even online. Well, basically, we've heard much from the different forms of artistic or cultural expressions, mostly from private artists or institutions or agencies. To complete the panorama of the arts and culture, it is our pleasure to have amongst us the Cultural Center of the Philippines. His cultural work with overseas Filipino communities has generated a cycle of plays that he wrote and directed, including America's in the Heart, staged in 1992 at the Greenview Arts Center in Chicago, and Peregrinación, staged in 1994 in San Francisco and 1996 in Hawaii.
He was conferred the Gawad Balagtas for Drama by the Union ng mga Manunulat sa Pilipinas in 2012, and he won the Best Stage Director Award from the Aliw Awards for Insyang in 2003, and the Outstanding Stage Direction for a Play Awards from the Philippine Legitimate Stage Artist Group Gawad Buhay. Let us all welcome Chris Milano,
Vice President and Artistic Director of the Cultural Center of the Philippines.
Magandang gabi, bonsoir. Yes, if not anyone is familiar with the Cultural Center of the Philippines, we're that big brutalist structure on Rojas Boulevard. Before the pandemic, you'd know there was a show going on if the fountains were up and our facade was beautifully lit up. Before the pandemic, we used to show at least 300 shows on our different venues, ranging from music, theater, dance. We also did screenings. Our rehearsal halls were busy. We more than 3,000 artists and creatives would flock to the center to create different kinds of work. When in 2019, we were already hitting the 900,000 mark in terms of visitorship and viewership, and we're working for at least 1 million. And you should know that in 2019, we were celebrating our 50th anniversary as the center, and we are ramping up in 2020 for bigger, better, more spectacular things to cap our celebration. But didn't happen because in March, as you know, we all locked down. So a few days before the lockdown, most of our team and creatives, the most we knew about smart technology was email. And we had to scramble at learning how to Zoom. Now, 2 years after, it's amazing to see how much we've learned and the kind of learning curve that had to hurdle and how this has affected the work that we've done in the performing arts. As you know, the performing arts is the opposite side of the spectrum. We're talking about live performance and not digital online performance. Next slide, please. So just to show you the kind of vocabulary that has entered our language, where one live streaming was just a way to expand our viewership into the regions. Now it has played a central role in the way we distributed performing arts productions. I won't go through everything, but I'll just tell the story of how these smart technologies began to engage with live performing arts. Next slide, please. First, video archives plus live streaming. This saved our lives. We immediately made a quick pivot to the digital platform because many years before we started digitizing and started archiving a lot of our performances and events at the CCP. So we had hidden in one basement corner of the building thousands of video titles, which we thought were just going to be there. We didn't even know how to distribute it, but it was there for archival purposes. But once the pandemic hit, we found a veritable treasure trove of digital content that we immediately put up in our live streaming. And this gave birth to the CCP channel, which until now continues to distribute various video archives as well as made for online material. Next slide, please. Live streaming also started to engage with live theater. One of the things that our audiences, especially our next generation live audiences, look forward to is our Virgin Lab Fest Festival, which is our one-act play festival. And this is one of the first challenges that we needed to do, how to translate the liveness and the excitement of theater and to continue to connect with these young audiences and playwrights. And the fun thing is our directors for the stage and actors for the stage, after hurdling how to use ring lights and use Zoom frames, they were able to tell the stories using these little Zoom frames in very creative, innovative ways. And it became the first theater festival in the Philippines that went online quite successfully. Next slide, please. Videos, live stream also started to be one of our flagship festivals, Cinemalaya. One of the major problems that we had with Cinemalaya is, remember, Cinemalaya is about full-length feature films made by emerging filmmakers. But because of the pandemic, a lot of the shooting and pre-production had to stop completely. So we didn't have full-length features to exhibit for our festival. But guess what? Always like sharing the spotlight was our short filmmakers. And they were ready with their films. So the Cinemalaya became, at that point, a spotlight for, a well-earned spotlight for our short filmmakers. And this became engaged very well with a shorter attention span of viewers who were locked in their living rooms. And because of that whole experiment, we gave the well-deserved spotlight on the specific art of storytelling through short feature films. Next slide, please. Cultural research. Before the pandemic hit, we launched a 12-volume encyclopedia of Philippine art, which was 5 years in the making, put together by hundreds of the best cultural researchers in the country. So, and we were preparing a digital version of it. And we were supposed to launch it later, like in 2021. But because of the lockdown, there was a great need from the Department of Education and the teachers for content. And we couldn't deliver a 12-volume encyclopedia that needed a crane to transport because of its weight. So we had to fast track the launch of the Encyclopedia of Philippine Art digital version. Next slide, please. Website design also engaged with institutional memory through the creation of the CCP digital time capsule. This was, the funny thing about this is it came out because as in any tradition, I guess after 50 years, one should uncover the cornerstone where some time capsule was literally buried in 1969 when the building was built. But no one could remember where the exact location where it was. So when the First Lady, Imelda Marcos, was asked where it was, where she could remember, she said, it's somewhere there. And she was in the middle of the main theater lobby. So it was quite impossible to excavate the main theater lobby. So we said, let's leave it at that, but this time, let's try to reinvent the time capsule. Why don't we use digital technology to recreate the time capsule? This gave birth to the CCP digital time capsule, which became more participative, and it became more interactive. So the website design, and during this, we used the whole time to collaborate with website designers to come up with a more engaging, interactive, and an evolving CCP digital time capsule, which has actually, as one of its features, also captured digital content of art during COVID. Next slide, please. Public art. QR codes used to be just these little things that you find in our tickets that were used by our sales and marketing, and we didn't really we didn't pay any attention to it until, again, our exhibit halls closed. And then we found it as an opportunity to start giving focus to different art that was in the different hallways of the CCP. There are quite a few of these iconic works that our viewers just sort of take for granted because they're just there. I guess they've blended so well with like wall decor. But we said, why not give them the attention that they deserve? So we used the QR code technology so that one now could actually do a do-it-yourself tour of the different public arts that is displayed in the different public spaces by just using your cell phone. And then when you use a QR code scanner, then a docent will appear in your small screen. In fact, it has also a child-friendly version where we hired and developed children to do their own narratives of specific art forms. Next slide, please. Yes, and we continue to use QR codes to enhance the experience of our literary publications. One specific example is the Genesis magazine, which was a commemorative issue of the CCP, made its 50th anniversary. And you will find these little QR codes in selected articles, and this augmented reality practically brings you into a video documentary that's related to the articles. So it deepens, it brings you into deeper dives into the content of the magazine. And we began to use the same technology for our other publications as well. Next slide, please. Building tour, yes, VR360 used to be this toy that we would find in some of our next gen staffers. And we started using this as a way to bring in a 360 experience. So we started to play around with virtual reality 360, and now we created these cardboard toys, which you can do it yourself. You slide in your phone, and then you're practically transported into a 360 experience of different spaces and exhibits at the CCP. So now we have different content in 360 being developed for this cardboard viewer. Next. Exhibits, VR360. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. Ayala Museum does this a lot. So practically, this is just a way of extending the life of exhibits, which usually just happens, usually just given 3 to 5 months on site. But because of VR360, now it can live for a longer time on the digital platforms. Next. This one. We didn't even know about binaural technology until the lockdown happened. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's some content out there where when you listen to it, it's not only a surround experience, the sound somehow travels all over, seems to travel different parts of your brain. And apparently it's an old technology, but it sort of became a new age technology during the pandemic because people felt that it had a soothing effect. It soothed your anxiety somehow. So we began to work with our sound technicians and work with the Philippine Madrigal Singers, which is known as one of the best choral performers in the world. And we said, how would it feel if you actually sat in the middle of the world famous Madrigal singers? How would it feel to be in the sweetest spot of that sound and music making? So this is the kind of experience we tried to recreate with the Philippine Madrigal Singers. So we're going to launch, it's not yet launched, we're going to launch a recording, 6 specially selected choral pieces, which gives you different experiences of sound. Sometimes You feel like you're being sung to like a baby. And this is very intimate singing in a lullaby. You will hear a ethnic fusion song with like birds. These are all vocalists flying all over your head and so on and so forth. But these are all created because of binaural technology with the madrigal singers. Next. Museum plus digital technology. We collapsed or we stored our artifacts in the museum, and it was already a vision right before the pandemic, but it even like enhanced the need for doing museum in a different way. We engage the collaborations with data scientists, and these were specific works that were made. They were not only digitized for the platform, but these were specific digital works specifically made for a digital museum. So one of the launching exhibit was the work of Pio Abad, who digitized the William Saunders collection, which is the name, of course, of the Marcoses in the Swiss bank accounts. And he digitized the tiaras and the brooches and crowns, etc., of that whole collection. And you can enter the digital museum and put the crown tiara on your own head, put it on your kitchen table, and so on and so forth. So play around with all of those images. So the next ones is we've worked with a data scientist who mapped out the different nodes of this information. And it's scary how to see all of these looking like a monstrous artwork. And then you're allowed to zoom in and see how these are all networked in different cells in different ways. So, you know, it's an engagement between data science and art. And this time it's being displayed in a platform called the 21 AM or the 21st Century Arts Museum. Next. Cultural research plus game development. We started a project many years ago called Jeepney ni Jan Jan, which is, I don't know if you still remember CD-ROM, but it was a game on CD-ROM. So Jeepney ni Jan Jan was a digital romp where you are asked to look for specific cultural treasures all over the Philippines. And you were supposed to fly to move around through a flying jeepney. And you were rewarded by little artifacts that you could decorate your own jeepney. You can decorate the jeepney with your artifacts that you are given as prizes. And so now we're reviving it and we're upgrading it by collaborating with game developers. And we're offering like applications and grants for developing small games that hopefully could be developed into major ones, but mining our existing content, which is the content of the Encyclopedia of Philippine Art. Next. And animation. In recognition, cognizant of the amazing growth of our animation industry, you wanted to collaborate with them, this time engaging them with a folk literature and looking at our different folk literature and how this would perhaps inform an animation project. Again, next slide, please. And this grimy little building in the photo is going to be the future CCP digital hub. We realized that we've developing quite a few digital content. So this used to be the hangout for drivers in the parking lot. So we saw in this building the future digital hub where digital content like the time capsule, the Encyclopedia of Philippine Art Digital, it can be a visitors center. And we were thinking of doing a hole in the wall where you have a 24-hour computer accessible to street kids so they could access digital content at the CCP anytime. And this is meant to be launched later part of this year. So this will house the different digital content of the CCP and hopefully becomes an introduction for viewers to step into the building. Okay, next slide. Yes, so this is some of our digital content, but let me just say that we just opened our doors again to live performances about 2 weeks ago. And when the audiences start to step in the main theater, I started getting teary-eyed because there was something I realized that something in live performances that couldn't be captured by digital online performances. And what was this? It was as simple as the buzz, the buzzing, the excited buzzing that you would hear, incomprehensible buzzing that you'd hear as audiences would greet each other. You didn't even understand what they were talking about, but it was that buzz that somehow gave that specific and unique electricity to live performance. And I think this is what online and smart technology could not outsmart in live performances, the buzz of congregation. You know, the buzz that we take home even after the curtain comes down. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Wow, it's you really went off on this digital landscape, and it's like CCP on steroids in the palm of your hand. So I love that you've created all of these really experiential programs, even when we're online. And I'm really looking forward to asking you 1,000 more questions after this. So thank you for that again. And our final online panelist for tonight is coming directly from Dubai. He's a social entrepreneur working to empower communities in the Philippines and around the world through several pioneering programs. He founded the My Shelter Foundation in 2006. And then he realized that he could build innovative, sustainable structures. He had no way to light buildings constructed far from the electrical grid. His solution to this challenge led to the Leader of Light movement. His latest venture is the world's first grassroots green lighting program, bringing low-cost, zero-carbon solar bottle bulbs to underprivileged communities worldwide.
He's a private sector representative in Dubai Expo 2020, celebrating culture, collaboration, and innovation expo, whose theme is connecting minds through creating the future. Will be visited by over 25 million people who will convene in Dubai from October 2021 to April. Well, it should be done by now. Let us all give it up for Ilak Diaz.
People talk about climate change, but in my country, we are being hit here and now.
We in the Philippines are in the front lines of a lot of climate change issues.
Hindi natin may tatanggi na natin tayo sa typhoon path. Pag dumating yung disaster, sinong tatamaan? Nakatira sa barong-barong.
Floating plastic blocked the drainage, raised the water. This is exactly what caused the floods. How do we take that something that is one of the largest problems, and how do you make it into something that solves things? And I told them, just wait for a while, and we will come up with something that you've never seen before.
Noong Disyembre, sa tulong ng proyektong Leader of Light, ay nabigyan ng libreng solar light bulbs ang mga lugar na kinalalhan ng bagyong Yolanda.
These people, they do things with everyday items with this kind of simple idea.
It's a bottle full of water. The light would be able to enter through the bottle and lights up a 35 square meter house.
The user should be the front and center of the design process. Sila yung gagamit eh.
Dati kami nasa madilim dahil gasera nga lang ginagamit namin, bibili pa kami ng gas.
Everything is first world model, but what would a development world model look like?
We have the opportunity to test technologies, and we're doing that. Climate change cannot be small time. We have to think ambitious.
Let's think of it bigger. Can it be possible in every city in the Philippines? And can this be something that can be happening everywhere in the world?
Hi, my name is Ayala Museum. I'm the founder and global director of Liter of Light. Thank you very much for inviting me and my team to Nuit Decide. Liter of Light basically is a grassroots movement teaching local communities to build with local parts using local skills. This is something that we do teaching corporates, schools, how to build solar lights in 30 minutes, light up a life for the next 5 years. And because it's so replicable and the parts are readily available and can be found in villages. During COVID was one of our most difficult periods. From expanding to 32 countries, 1,200 staff, we had to almost take out 2/3 of our team. But then an idea came back where we challenged people from inside their home to make a solar light, put it online, and challenge 5 others. Within weeks, what started out as something from my backyard started going in the hundreds, and from hundreds to thousands. More than 300 celebrities were part of it, then government officials. Each time we would make a message of hope where we took thousands of lights. We made SDGs. We thought about making flags to inspire the frontliners. But most of all, we started having these messages of hope where we started writing out tweets so that people will be inspired as we go through the pandemic. It was so successful that we were invited to Italy and later to Scotland. And now we're here in Dubai. Our film is about this story. TBA production that made General Luna, Gregorio del Pilar, were able to change that, flip the script and change the narration in the field of environment. Therefore, we created Theory of Light. TBA Productions is now doing something where we want to show our own heroism in a different way. We wanted to show not a top-down, but a bottom-up approach where people can come together and make a big difference. The number of viewers already on our campaign has crossed 10 million views, and we've done more than 4,000 volunteers. This all have been donated to villages. We want young people to be inspired by this movie, besides the Al Gore and Leonardo DiCaprio, and wanted them not to look at Liter of Light, but to have their own ideas. Because thousands out there have solutions to poverty, to the SDGs that will make this a better world for all. But more than that is we need to tap them and inspire them. Not wait for ideas to come to us, but ideas to come from our own because it's sustainable, scalable, and just like Liter of Light, one day it can change millions of lives around the world.
Introducing our final panelist for tonight. One of them who is here is the co-presenter of Mr. Ayala Museum. She's the current social vice president of the Philippine-Italian Association. In 2004, the National Commission for Culture and Arts awarded her in recognition of her significant contribution to the appreciation and development of culture and art in the Philippines. And in 2017, she won the Italian National Award given by His Excellency Italian Ambassador Massimo Rosigno. Please all welcome Silvana Diaz.
Thank you very much for everything. Being the mother of Black Diaz has not been easy. Because of his idea, many times I find them so out of the world that I tend not to believe. But I must say that he has so much courage, so much determination, so much and strength that he really pours blood and sweat and tear in everything he believes. So here is a little remark that I like to contribute to the Nuit des Idées. On behalf of my Shelter Foundation, Liter of Life, and Ayala Diaz, thank you for inviting to the Nuit des Idées. The theme of tonight is Rebuilding Together, celebrates the idea that we're born out of time of great crisis around the world. Exactly during the time where we were losing hope, new ideas sprang forth that follow us to dream and discover again. One of the things that Ayala came up was the use of solar light. that we had stored in our home to make messages of hope for the frontliners that were helping to combat the virus. It was a way for us to feel useful at a time when everybody was asked to stay home, and because of creative outlet for us to share our hope and dream with others. Starting in April 2020, every day at 3 p.m., we will start to assemble hundreds of life into messages. In fact, you saw in the television before, that was the lawn of our house. Summer heat, we will arrange the light in the courtyard of the house and take photo in the sunset. Everyone in our house participate, everybody. That was our exercise. It gave us a routine and allows us to feel like we were doing something worth it in our own small way. At first, we started with a message that became up. I remember, La vita è bella. But then we thought, if we feel inspired by making these messages, others might too. Here began that will become the little life forward. We started in our own, grew to viral online campaign, inviting people to join in building solar light in the safety of their home. It grew from one house to 100 light, as Ilak said before, 2,000 and more. We will send an envelope. This envelope was sealed. And through messengerial service, we will send the envelope with everything inside, so the people could make the light. Instead of simple word message, the team began to partner with other groups like the Rotary and our corporate partner to build some of the largest solar power art installation in the world, like the Philippine flag, who was made in Luneta, a facsimile of Rizal, which was shown in Luneta Park. We also worked in Cebu, where we make the Santo Niño, that was really very well appreciated. We also made around the Luneta, we also made the Via Crucis, all the rosary all around there. When we first started, we had no idea that it will grow to this scale, not just in the Philippines, but also around the world. Eventually, the campaign reached Italy, where last November, in front of one central mark, Castello Sforzesco, we shared the message, another world is possible. Our story is just one demonstration of how art, a creative idea, can flourish even in the midst of turbulent time. We hope that this can be the start of the new renaissance, where people with beautiful ideas can and will share them with the world. Desperately need all of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Silvana. I think the crazy creative ideas of Ilak, knowing him and knowing his mom, I think he got it from his mom. That concludes our first part of the presentations. Now, we're very happy and privileged to have also with us from Little Flight to join us in the panel.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting us. It's a great pleasure to be here. And, it's very important to share the ideas.
Wonderful. Great, great. I have one question for there are several Italians, I was going to say, for the Italians, but for the Alice Nirachita, with the reopening of cinemas.
Oh, yes.
What are your plans? Are you still going to pursue what you have been doing, projecting films? I mean, I got very emotional because I remember Cinema Paradiso, which I really love as a film. But how do you want to proceed from now that the cinemas are opening again?
Yeah, Cinema da Casa was a response to the outbreak of COVID. Because, as you say, Cinema Paradiso was a great example. you know, because when our children asked us why Rome was so different and silent, we decided to fight the unnatural silence of our city. So we're using a projector, simply placing it outside our home windows, and we started projecting the images of the themes we love most, sharing with them, with our neighborhood, to illuminate our city. That's what happened with Cinema da Casa. This is how Cinema da Casa was born. The first day we projected scenes from François Truffaut, or as you say, Cinema Paradiso, or Billy Elliot, or the Aristocats, you know, or Charlie Chaplin. Yes. After sharing these images, what happens was, you know, something amazing, because on our personal social networks and on those of Alice in the City, or like activity involved into word of mouth buzz. And day by day, many windows decided to project with us each night at 10 p.m. In addition to Rome, Turin, Palermo, Catania, Pisa, and Bari, the entire nation, but also from other parts of the world have started to write us and participate themselves. Became, you know, our family. We have been amazed to see screenings in the Philippines, Vietnam, Brazil, Bulgaria, and Poland. And the images of our films have gone as far as America, thanks to the post on social profile of Trudy Schuyler, Penelope Cruz, Kendall Jenner, just to name a few. A moment of joy for our family has turned into a moment of joy shared with many other people, in which everyone can participate. The images projected on the walls of our city, which are bouncing to all continents, show us once again how cinema can bring people together, even in difficult times like we had. Now the question is very important, because is how to go ahead now. Now we just open the theaters again. We need a mask into the theater since 2 weeks ago. We was in Cannes, and now we start a new life for the cinema. But now it's very difficult in Italy for the summer season. So we need to make something that makes sense, like Cinema da Casa, like what you say, something that take people to the cinema, because people love the cinema, because they love emotion, loves imaginations. It's something they would like, to have dreams. So we think it's very important to start, to restart the cinema from young people with the programs in the schools. And we need then something special, because if not, it's very difficult to restart, and to restart especially with the theaters, because we need, hot emotions, not cold emotion like we had it with the platform. So we think it's very important to promote the cinema in different ways, and to imagine also special events like you made it, and more ideas, so we can, the cinema inside the theater will survive.
Thank you so much. We have a follow-up question. Thank you, Alice Nalachita. We have a question again about the experience of just you commuting together and going towards the digital landscape. So last year, CCP, Art Fair, Ayala Museum, you really brought your experience to the digital. How digital will you stay? Are you still going to have programs that are focused on that, or are you going to go back to the way it was? Maybe you can shed some light on that?
Well, we are primarily a live performance venue, so although live streaming definitely is here to stay, we look at the digital work as a way of enhancing our work, not only now in promotions, but extending towards even distribution. So, because of the nature of live performance, where we have limited shows at the center now, because of live streaming, it could have a longer shelf life.
I think in our case, and I think we mentioned it in the video, we look at it like a virtual circle, and that's why phygital is important to us, because I think what we learned from going digital is we reached so much more people. And sometimes the entry point to art and culture is digital, but you have to give them the opportunity to access it in the physical level. So that's why the whole idea of digital is something that's guiding us. And therefore, that was the kind of investment that we were thinking of. And if you ask me, there's no turning back from digital. So because you can get access from either entrances, either. Yeah. So I think that's important to do because we've reached so many people just by being online, and we don't want to lose that. Thank you.
That's true. Yeah, because well, from the French, I just wanted to share this before I lose track of the thought. As early as March, the French embassy sought to pursue its cultural presence as part of its cultural diplomacy program in the Philippines. We've been having what we called Cultural Thursdays, once a month, one Thursday per month event that would showcase, it could be a concert, it could be a poetry reading, it could be a cultural conference or anything. But with the lockdown, we had to stop all that. The Alliance Française had to close its doors. But then we had to go digital. We were able to gather musicians in the small function room of the Alliance Française and shoot a concert, a video concert of a trio. We were obviously limiting the number of participants to a minimum. But then to be able to continue offering the followers of the social media of the French embassy French content, which was lacking. Fortunately, we were able to adopt that. But then now the question is, and that's a question we're raising to you, it's do we pursue that? Is that something that has to be a fixture in our programming? How does that go for your institutions or for your specific sectors?
I can answer that in his field. In my field, for art, we go on with the digital.
I don't think you can turn back from it anymore. Because I believe that once people do something for more than 30 days, it becomes a habit. And they will keep on looking for it. It's much easier now, I think, to navigate digital because of the pandemic. We had no choice. So now you tend to use it as an augmentation to enrich your life. So yeah, if you ask me, I mean, that's my opinion.
Yeah, he lack in his field, I don't know but I'm sure he wants to go forward.
Grazie. One of the most important parts really in inspiring us to tell our story was when President Francois Hollande came to the Philippines and he said a single mission to protect and hand on the planet to the next generation. This was after Haiyan. And one of the things he said is, you have to tell your story. And so he brought us to Paris, where there was the climate change. And I realized how little opportunity there was for Asian to be able to tell their story, if even after Haiyan. Less than 1% of all production budgets is for telling about the story about planet and climate in the Philippines. Less than 1% of historically all budgets, despite the fact that it was very destructive. 10,000 people lost their lives, 4 million houses destroyed. And so I sort of kept that, growing the Litter of Light, building solar lights and expanding to 32 countries. But as 2023 was coming, the 10th year anniversary, we really felt that the Philippines should find its voice. And it was kind of it was difficult. And my mother said, "Avanti, sempre avanti." This is the battle cry of the Ancelotti. And so we remembered that there was this thing called the Ice Bucket Challenge, where people can challenge each other online. That there was this viral way of challenging people, building it, showing it online to prove that they made it, and then coming to, challenging other 5 people. And this became viral. Now, this film by TBA Productions is really a courageous story that for 2023, on the eve of the first landfall of the most destructive, one of the highest speeds of typhoons to hit the country, we felt that we have to go on. So, of course, with JP and everybody, we started using areas that were open to us, like we wrote to CCP several times, and then, of course, to Luneta, to be able to make the largest artwork. How do you bring thousands of people together when they cannot come together? So we did it by proxy, everybody coming together to make some of the largest artworks in the world. JP is going to speak to you about doing a climate film in one of the most difficult times and of course, we want to still reach out to the French embassy because we made this largest Twitter in the world, where we acknowledge that 75% of the world does not speak English and cannot express its story and message. So we made some of the largest messages in the planet. Sorry if I have to show it, just so it's understood. And so this way, we can express what young people were feeling during the COP when they could not come out. Thousands of them built them by hand. Each and every one is a small pixel of light. And we, of course, started moving into Scotland and England. But one of the things that we could not do is bring this world's largest Twitter. So we brought it to Bonifacio with the Ayala group. There were empty, this provided us empty venues where cars were not running, empty parks, empty tops of buildings. But we wanted to bring this message to the planet, back to the story, which Frans Hollande said, raise your voice, express yourself. And so we want to bring this messages hope back to Paris. And hopefully we'll be able to express 100 messages of hope from around the world so that leaders will remember that Haiyan should never happen again. So we're, of course, I leave this story making to the professionals. So this is our first climate change film in history, but from a Filipino's perspective, where young Filipino school students can understand in our language what is happening with the climate. Thank you.
Thank you, Iraq. Question for Dindin. Art fairs. The Art Fair Philippines was growing. This is starting to become really big and international. With the pandemic, it closed down. This is not just for art fairs for visual arts, but even international film festivals like Cannes. Yes, there's a big Philippine delegation to Cannes right now, and a lot of things are happening. There's a co-production, cooperation agreement being signed between France and the Philippines. I'm happy to see the executive director of FDCP with us here this evening, in spite of the rest of his team in Cannes still right now. But the thing is, even Cannes, a lot of our distributors or buyers or producers hesitated to go to Cannes because their appointments are online. They can negotiate screening rights already by email. How is that going to happen with art fairs? Do you see an influx of visitors for next year's edition? Or do you think an online or digital platform would supplant a physical fair?
Okay. What you're asking is whether the numbers of visitors will increase for 2023.
That's one. And how would a digital platform, I don't know, supplant it, replace it?
Would it replace it?
Complement it?
I think similar to what Mariles and Chris talked about, I think the digital platform is really there to stay. What we've done recently for the art fair is that all of the Zoom sessions that we've had for this year and in the past, we've started to upload all of that on YouTube so that they can be accessed. But really, the physical experience of going to the art fair, I think, cannot be replaced because that's part of the appreciation. Case in point, this year, despite the lockdown, well, we had more numbers of days. We had about 12,000 people, 17,000 people who came, who attended. So this was despite the having been people not being in events for so long. So there's still an interest. Before the lockdown in 2020, we had about 30,000 people that came. So there is that interest, and we hope that it continues to grow. And interestingly, also there were a lot of young people that came this year. So I don't think it will be supplanted, but maybe there will be complementary efforts to reach a broader audience.
Well, yeah, because there really is nothing like having a painting right on your wall and you're staring at it in the same way that like last week when there was a tribute to the late Shani Lisa, who obviously would have been an attendee of the Night of Ideas. But sitting there in front of the PPO, it was tear-jerking. I was moved. And there's nothing can replace that. I mean, a digital performance on your laptop, even if you have binaural or whatever experience, I don't think anything can really replace being there. You had a question for Ricky?
Questions from the audience? All right, Ricky, we have a question, and it's from online. So there is during these last few years, there is a rise in people selling their art digitally, NFTs, and all of that. You did something online. So what's in it for you in the future? What's next?
You know how we launched the book? We actually had a physical exhibition and a physical launch because, as Chris said, there is just no replacing that congregation, that buzz of congregation. However, that said, today we have launched Robert Alejandro's online exhibition. With his frail health at the moment, we had to do it online, and we were able to do it successfully. So I think there's, as Mariles said, there is no turning back. We have to do it both ways.
All right, great. And we have one more question for Sabrina.
Sabrina, how do you see musical collaboration? Are we bringing back, are we inviting musicians across borders, or are we pushing more collaborations through innovative applications or software?
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me? Good night, everyone. Yeah, for music, what I saw, so I was in France for the last 6-7 years. And during pandemic, people, they were organizing like live online concerts, like I was saying in my presentation. But I think live art will come back. Like I've been in Singapore for a month now, and there are already like projects for artists to come back, for musicians to come back, and to resume all the music collaboration on the face-to-face project. For music, it cannot be, digital is a great tool to promote, to create, and to organize stuff together. But you cannot replace the live art. It's really the quintessence of music. So touring will resume soon. Actually, for the French artists, some tours are already planned in Southeast Asia. So I think people and artists will come back to live performance and concert and will travel again. But the digital is coming as an added value it's a tool to promote your music. So we can play on both panel now, live and digital. Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that sums up the discussions this evening. I mean, live and digital go hand in hand. They complement each other.
Sorry, I wanted to invite JP, the director of the first Filipino global climate film, how he was able to put together this for next year's anniversary of Typhoon Haiyan. If you can just have a few words, having made the first climate film despite all the funding and challenges. Thank you. He's right there in the audience.
Who's joining us here?
Okay, listen, I think it's very interesting this discussion, but in our opinion, we made the digital market of Berlinale and the physical market now, the Le Marché in Cannes. I think it's completely different, because with the digital version you can have first discussion. It's something that it's another choice, another opportunity. But if you have really to make a deal, or also for cultural reasons and cultural purpose, for example, we made it in Philippines 2 months ago, the Movi Movi Italian Film Festival in digital version to promote our cinema. It's completely different, because if you travel, if you have the occasion to know each other and to discover the place, it's something else. If you have just a digital platform, as I say, it's something cold. So it's something, but it's not enough. That's my opinion, also for the market, but also to promote our cinema or cinema around, or the cinema around the world.
All right, thank you very much. JP, you have the floor.
Oh, yeah, like what everyone was saying about the digital platform, I think at least from our experience having produced this particular film during the pandemic, it was a bit difficult, but I think the story in itself was really deserving enough that it was worth all the effort that took the entire team, TBA Studios, of course, the Litter of Light Studios, just to put it all together during that trying time was a bit of a journey in itself. So we can't wait. We can't wait to kind of show it to everyone.
Yay, congratulations. All right. So as we reach the end of this wonderful night, we would like to extend our warmest gratitude to the Embassy of France to the Philippines and Alliance Française de Manille for bringing us together. This event wouldn't have been possible, again, without the efforts of our organizers and our partners.
We'd like to thank everyone for having joined us this evening. It's a night of ideas. The night is young, so we can keep on chatting, but I think we have to go offline so we can enjoy each other's company personally, physically. There's nothing like, I think that is the conclusion tonight. There's nothing like the human contact. That said, thank you very much for this evening. Merci beaucoup. Maraming salamat po.
Grazie.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Grazie.